What is up, side hustlers, entrepreneurs, business builders, and dream makers? Welcome to the Study Side Hustle Podcast, episode 91. Today, we have a very special guest on, my friend AJ Rivera. You know what, AJ? I'm just going to let you tell everybody about you, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I can make stuff up, is what you're saying.
Oof.
We love it.
Let's say no. I will have independent fact checkers look into it.
You know the character Batman, they're based off me. No, so my name's AJ Rivera. I'm a business person. I've owned businesses basically my entire adult life, which is, as of right now, 16 years or something like that. So everything from gyms, that's kind of how I started. I started as a gym owner, which actually came from a side hustle, right? It was a side hustle of personal training. I feel like that happens to a lot of fitness people. Like they start a boot camp or they help people with soccer or bodybuilding or whatever it is, right? So I started with that. And then before I knew it, I had this multiple gyms and they were doing pretty well. And that was great. I was able to sell and exit those profitably, which was cool. Then I went into consulting and training in that space, wellness and fitness space for a long time. And that was like my first like 7-figure business, which is, exciting. When you're younger in business, you're like, oh my God, I hit 7 figures. I've made it, is what you kind of think. Right. And like, it's this ethereal
goal,
number.
Man.
Well, there you go. Right. Yeah. So like, that's the goal a lot of people put off in their head. And when they do it, they're like, wow, I guess I can do this. Right. So I did that for a few years, got into the agency space, got into the B2B space. I worked a corporate gig, or I was a VP of marketing for a $200 million B2B recruiting and staffing firm, helped them add 60 million in 10 months. Now I run a firm. Actually, don't run it. I own the firm called Blink Media, which does B2B business development for a lot of consultants, service providers, some freelancers and stuff like that, where we just build a little automated system that I use for myself to generate high quality meetings with like good clients, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing now, and we're doing that for clients. So we've got, I've had the pleasure of serving over like 50 to 60 in the past year, which is a wonderful place to be. And just promoted and hired some people, and so now we're just hanging out. And yeah.
Has anybody ever told you that your story sounds a lot like Alex Hormozy's?
Because we're both in the fitness space and we're both in our 30s. Yeah. I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't done 100 million zillion dollars, nor am I as swole, but yes, I that does often come up. And I'm very familiar with him. I know he does a lot of stuff in the make money online world, and he's helping a lot of people, it would appear, with books and
Seems
talks.
to be.
And
Yeah. Giving away a ton for free.
Yep.
Can I ask you a little bit about the exits with the gyms? Can we go there a little bit?
Sure.
I'd be curious to know kind of the time frame and kind of the why behind the exit. I think those would be interesting. Yeah.
Good questions. So why did I what was the time frame on exiting? So when I started the gym, it was not, an easy go. You kind of struggled. I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to really, I didn't formally know how to sell, right? I've never really sold. Even now, I still don't sell. Like, I don't hard sell. I just don't like it. I don't think it's necessary if what you're doing is objectively valuable. That's my feeling. But I had to learn a lot of those skills and learn how to teach other people in order to make a gym work without me. And so, it took a couple of years of like making a lot of mistakes and, being willing to change things, which is, I've been told, is a strength of mine. I'm like, I don't get attached to, a certain process or system or anything if it's not working or serving me anymore. Right. So it took a few years, and then I decided I was going to exit them once it was consistently doing like a good amount of revenue. I think the actual revenue number was something like $60,000 a month in top line or something, which is like, it's like a nice 6-figure salary for somebody, or a lower salary with bonuses and investments, which is what a smart person should do. And that was kind of that was the timeline on it. And that
how many locations did you have?
I
at that
had
point?
two.
Two locations. Okay.
Yeah, I had two. And then we also had a remote training for a while. That was harder to scale because it's a professional middleman business at that point, right? Which I don't know if I love it. So we did that, but we just shut that part down. But no, we had two locations in the Chicagoland area, out in the northwest suburbs. Actually, one of them is a block away from where I currently live. And it's a different gym, purchased and acquired it a few years back.
Hmm.
But it's still a gym. And so it's kind of cool to see that it's a gym. And then the other one was in another suburb called Plains, Illinois. And I think the person who bought that gym decided to close it, after a few years of running it.
So it was
But
two
yeah,
separate acquisitions. Then you sold each individually.
correct. And
Okay.
technically, if somebody's actually interested in this nerd shit, it wasn't actually a selling of the business. It was a selling of contracts and assets,
Hmm.
and IP, which is technically different because you're not selling the business at a valuation. You're selling the contracts and you're selling all the stuff. But that's the way I did it to keep it cleaner. But yeah, so that was how I exited them. I sold one to one. Basically, my two general managers, one for each location, each bought them. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I did with that. It was and then I went into training and consulting for gym owners. I was actually doing that a little bit while I had the gyms, and then obviously picked that up as once I sold the gyms. I wanted to be able to work remotely, and I was just tired of doing the same thing. I think everybody gets bored a little bit. So yeah.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna guess here. Well, let me ask a question before I go that route.
Mhm.
Just in this was pre-COVID. The sales were pre-COVID. Am I correct in that? I'm kind of
All
guessing
of
there.
this was pre-COVID. Yeah, this
Yeah,
was in like 20. I sold the gym in 2016.
2016. Okay. I just wanted to clarifying that because
Mhm.
like was curious if like there's no chance that you're hiding the fact that you got out because it was like COVID and all gyms shut down, right? But
I know, and I think it's okay to admit that, right? Like I sold all my agency contracts for the gym right before COVID, which
Mhm.
fortunately worked out for me.
Mhm.
But had I not, I would have had to probably close it anyway or drastically downsize.
Right.
So no, I ran those gyms for I believe it's 6 years.
Mhm.
Um and in the fifth year, we started prepping to franchise and collecting those assets and operation manuals and stuff like that. And instead of franchising, we decided to just sell. Um, and that's what we did. Yeah.
What what prompted that decision? Was that like a personal burnout kind of thing? Was it going into
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a good question. I never got into, and this is probably, not exciting for anybody who worked with me in the past for fitness. I'm not a big fitness person. Like I love to run. I run most days. I go to the gym sometimes. I do the big lifts, right? But I'm not like this bodybuilder guy. I'm not obsessed with fitness. I only got into it as a side hustle, like legitimately. It was a side hustle that kind of got away from me. Uh, I was doing it because while I was in college, I thought it would be a nice little part-time job. All the ads I advertise personal training say $50 to $100 an hour. I'm like, well, shit, that sounds great. Like $100 an hour to stand there and coach people. That sounds exciting. And then it just kind of snowballed into where I am right now. So, you know, I you can plan for one thing and then something completely different happens. So I thought I was going to be like a teacher or something like that.
I actually was a teacher, so that's
I
interesting.
know, I
Um
know you are.
so so I'm guessing then I'll go back to the route that I almost did a second ago. I'm guessing that those acquisitions probably weren't at such a level that it was like, oh great, I can retire, I never have to worry about work again. But
No,
they were did they leave you in a position where you had the ability to take a decent amount of time off and decide what you wanted to do, or were you immediately back into the consulting work?
I could have taken a break, but I didn't, which
Mhm.
was a mistake, I would say.
Okay.
I think taking breaks is a good thing. But no, I was already doing a little bit of consulting, so I just step the gas on more consulting, and really went hammer there for a solid year. Like it was like a sprint, and that worked out, right? That consulting company was able to go like 0 to 2 million in like 7 months or something crazy. It actually grew too fast, one might say, right? Because you're going to learn lessons of like how to train people, how to staff, how to filter clients into the right path for them, and things like that, right? Especially when you're no longer the service provider, the solo service provider,
Mm-hmm.
right? But yeah, no, I went straight into it. I did take a break in 2020, right before the pandemic happened. Like I think it was maybe February or something, like literally right
Mm-hmm.
before it was like a big thing, and everything was shut down. And then I just took like 2 years and just hung out. Supposedly, I tried to hang out, but then I found myself turning all of my hobbies into projects. Too many motivational podcasts, I think. So for
I
me,
act,
not yeah.
yeah, no, I get that. So you said something interesting. You said that it grew too fast,
Mhm,
and the experience I have to what that could could mean is actually just from Shark Tank, from people talking about how a business growing too fast can kill it.
mhm,
And in Shark Tank's context, it's if you grow faster than your supply, you can kill your business
mhm,
pretty quickly that way. But for for myself, because I'm selfish, but also for my listeners, because most of them are not in a place where they're making millions. That
mhm.
is the aspiration.
Sure.
What's one of the biggest problems that you saw from growing too fast? What are some actual dangers and some problems that come along with that?
Cool. That's a really good question to ask. So, you as a math teacher will probably appreciate that math is the big reason to not grow too fast. Typically, what'll happen, in my experience consulting with, I don't know, 1,000 business owners in all different spaces, is once you start growing, people want to just step the gas and sell, 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 right? And that's not necessarily the wrong thing to do. But there is a certain point where you have to like evaluate the systems that can support what you're selling. And so one of the big things that really informed my decision was looking at how much revenue I would have done had I had a higher retention rate on my clients and a higher success rate, which we already had a pretty high success rate, but an even higher success rate. And it was like the equivalent of like hundreds of thousands to maybe even millions that would have gone into in profit, right? And so I had actually an operations consultant run these numbers for me, and he's like, you could have made two and a half what you made if you just would have fixed this, this, and this. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, shit, like that sucks to know. So I think it's really easy, especially when you're selling like informational type products like consulting, but it's a course, and some people
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? Or supplemented by a course or group
Mm-hmm.
calls. But I still think it's probably worth zooming out and looking at like your client success and your customer
Mm-hmm.
lifetime value and really understanding what do you want that to be. Some people are like, I'm gonna sell on the front end. I'm just gonna bill you 20K, and then if you're gone forever, that's fine. Some people are like, I'm going to sell you $500 a month and I'm going to keep you for the rest of my life. Right. Or some people are like, I'm going to sell you a one-time product all the time and you're going to be happy with it. There's lots of right ways. I think just knowing what your outcome was. And for
Yeah.
us, we had an intro product and we had a retention product. And the pathway to getting there was an opportunity missed. Um, and and growing too fast, having support systems, right? So like if you, all of a sudden you go from having like 10 clients to like 80, right? And you were doing everything yourself, and now you have team members doing it. So you're training them as you're going. And I think you set your client up to potentially fail and you set your staff up to fail. So those are some of the things that I think are potential like things to watch out for. But those are things to watch out for when you've like validated your offer, meaning, it's doing at least, I don't know. I hate giving an arbitrary number because it's all about profit, but like,
Mm-hmm.
100 to a million, depending on your business. If you're in the service industry, like if you're hitting like 300,000 a year, that's when you should evaluate, in my opinion, and be like, okay, what do I need to scale if that's your goal?
That makes sense.
But that's just like if they're a coach or coaching
Right.
products. That's my feeling. But again, I only have my experiences, and that's what I would do.
So I I mean, I'm on the client end, so I've just been speculative about it. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a coaching company that I'm very confident grew too quickly. I think that was their primary problem,
Crude
and
what?
grew too quickly.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I'm very
Mm-hmm.
confident that was their primary problem, that they
Yep.
were very successful very quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I watched that they used to have this entry level program that was like 3 months or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it was. I'm not going to say numbers because I don't want to do anything that says who I'm talking about because I'm not
Sure.
going to say positive things about them. But it
Mm-hmm.
was an XXX product.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that, they had this retention program that
Mm-hmm.
was only 20% more, roughly, than their entry product. And instead of being 3 months, it was an annual. And so that was
Mm-hmm.
their retention.
Yep.
And I watched as I was going through their entry product,
Mm-hmm.
they closed their upsell product. And looking into it, I was able to be pretty confident that I knew why. And it was because nobody bought it and nobody was
Mm-hmm.
willing to stay with them because nobody got results that made them happy.
Correct.
And then, yeah, I looked into the company a little bit more and I see that in their first 6 months from launch, there's nothing but amazing reviews. And past that, there's no longer good reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I think you grew too quickly.
Correct.
And I don't think you grew in a healthy way either.
Correct.
And so I wonder though, because I don't have the type of relationship with them where I can ask them their numbers, and so I wonder if how close your numbers are. But I've seen the same problems you're talking about from the client side of it, and just very was and even before you said that, I've been very confident for a long time that was their problem, was that they
Mm-hmm.
grew too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And since I paid them, I can say that my unfortunate circumstance was that I paid them after they got big, because they might have been
Mm-hmm.
fantastic had I joined sooner. Um, but
Yeah, that unfortunately happens. I feel like in the coaching and internet business world, in what I've seen,
mhm.
is sometimes people give their all in the beginning because they want those case studies, and then they kind of just stop caring, which is not awesome in my book.
Yeah,
Also, it's just cut some of the growing pains of like, well, I was working directly with Devin, and now I'm working with Devin's employee, Timmy,
right.
and Timmy is not as I Timmy maybe you fire Timmy a month later, right? And I'm like, well, I got trained by somebody who you eventually fired. I'm unhappy with the product. What are you going to do to make it okay, right? And I
Right.
mean, that's just kind of the nature of that industry. But I think it's a good thing to be kind of aware of a lot of companies that grow quickly, like that's treated like it's a good thing, and it is sometimes, but it can also be indicative of like there's like if in a service-based business there's you still need people, like, and if they go from 40,000 to 400,000 a month in 2 months, how did they do that? Were they training people for the past 6 months, or did they just onboard a bunch of like unqualified people to walk
Mhm.
you through their product?
Yep.
I don't know.
And there's the not giving the benefit of the doubt side is you need to be good at two things to grow quickly. You need to be good at marketing and sales. Um, that's a good way of leaving a wake of destruction behind you if you don't
Correct.
get good at
Correct.
everything else. But
Mm-hmm.
at least what I've seen in the example that's in my mind is they are very, very good at marketing, very, very good at sales. And I believe they were good at consulting, and then they outgrew their capacity and
Yes.
didn't stop their sales machine, basically. Um,
Correct.
so let me transition a little bit. I'm curious. You ran the consulting agency. You
Mm-hmm.
got that to, you said 2 million a year, or
It was
somewhere in
around
there.
two to three, depending on the year. But yeah, I hung out around there. Yeah.
And you did that, but then my understanding is that you became a VP of marketing after that for a
Mm-hmm.
different company. So did you sell that? Did you sunset it? When did that happen? Why did that happen? How did you get out of the consulting?
I sold those contracts, and I sold all my agency contracts and consulting contracts in 2019 to 2020. So I was transitioning out, and those were the reason for that was burnout.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the main driver. I wasn't super loving what I was doing. I think sometimes, and you know this, you sell and offer marketing services to people. Working with like startup businesses, you're dealing with people who are under a great amount of stress. And so sometimes they don't have anywhere
I'm
to
under a
channel
great
that
amount of
stress.
stress.
Sure, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I get that, right? And so sometimes they channel it in not the best ways. Like I was finding some of our customer success people were ending up like almost being therapists for these people, and almost I'm like, look, like that's not our job. Like we need to have a clear line. And I think it's just like I got caught up is really the truth. Like, I don't want to be a bazillionaire. And I know that's probably not what people want to hear on here. Maybe not. I don't know. Some people just want
A lot of
enough
people
to
like the
like,
idea of a lifestyle business, and
yeah.
yeah.
So I remember when I first grew my consulting company to like, I think my first goal was like 20 or 30,000 a month or something like that. And when I hit it, I was like, oh, sick. I did it. I went and bought myself a TV as a reward. And that was it. I was like, okay, cool. I could do this. And then my advisor and mentor at the time was like, hey, so do you think you could take this to 100,000 a month? And I was like, I don't know. I I didn't even think about it. Right. And then, so because I was kind of surrounded by, very motivated people, and that's not a bad thing, but like, I think I was surrounded by these people who were like trying to get to a million and then 10 million and then a zillion, right? Like everybody has their goals. Some people just want to take over the world. Some people want enough to like provide for their family, right? Some people want to travel and have a lifestyle business. I think I was just being caught up with who basically my new friends were, right? And so I was like, yeah, let's go to 100,000 a month, and then let's go to 200, and then let's go to 3, right? And it's not even necessarily what I really wanted. It just kind of happened. Not to say I didn't pursue it. It was just
Right.
like it was somebody else. It was just the company I was keeping, and so that's what I think contributed to it. Is like I wasn't even doing what I really wanted to be doing. And then because once you change how your life is and where you live and the whole, like I had moved, I was living a slightly not an ostentatious lifestyle, but it was more expensive. I had moved from Chicago to California. California is notoriously very expensive, and so all of our expenses went up, and the whole thing, right? And we had staff, so we had payroll that was really expensive, and I felt responsible for all that, but it wasn't actually what I wanted. And I think that's what led to the burnout, really, and being afraid to let go and trust the people who were around me, my team members.
Okay. So it's interesting. One of the things I've noticed a pattern now in the exits we've talked about. You
Mhm.
don't sell your companies, you sell your assets. Um,
Correct. Yep. Mhm.
is there like a nugget of wisdom in that? There a reason you do that, or is it just very
It's fast.
particular?
It's faster, and you don't need as clean of books. You still need clean books, but you don't need all the other shit that typically comes with a proper exit. Um, you, yeah, that's the main reason. Selling it's much easier to value assets, right? If you have, let's say, 500,000 in billing, right? In contracts, well, then you could say like you could sell that pretty safely for however much, 1.5 million on the low end, even higher if it's a high degree of certainty that there's a high stick rate. Um, so that's the reason I sell the assets, and not the entire companies. Um, yeah, I mean, that's the main reason. And then you
Okay.
also keep things separate, right? You keep assets separate from intellectual property, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of times, sometimes people just want your clients, right?
Hmm.
There's a whole acquisition strategy that people utilize where they just buy companies, not because they actually want your company, they just want your customers. And
Right.
it's cheaper to
They just want your
buy.
list.
Correct. So
Yeah.
it's cheaper to buy all your customers than it is to go get them yourself, right?
Hmm.
Or to fight against them and
Hmm.
like say, hey, we're better for X. Let me just buy the company, right? And buy the contracts. And so that's
Okay.
that's part of why we did that. I was advised by, my legal team that it was a faster, simpler transition,
Gotcha.
um, and cheaper for me. And they're like, if you don't really care that, like, I'm not that. Maybe I'm not, and this isn't what your listeners want to hear. I'm not that money driven. I hope that. I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, to people. Like, I'm not that money driven. Like, I don't care that much. Like, to me, it's just a thing you need to acquire to eat food. Like, there's nothing wrong with people who love it and it's their whole like personality and it's their whole like motivation in life. Not zero, nothing wrong. Zero and not zero. Right. It's just not me. Right. And so I was like, I don't care, whatever's fastest. Like
Gotcha.
at that time, I just wanted to I wanted to live by a beach. So I didn't even really care how
Gotcha.
much, so
So
yeah.
after you sold the assets, do you then just dissolve the company, or are those companies still
Um,
floating around?
no, so some of the companies, so the gyms, those were dissolved.
Hmm.
The agency and consulting, I kept both of those because
Okay.
I ended up doing consulting and agency work after the fact. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
and I thought I might. That's the other reason I sold the assets in that instance, because I wasn't like, I wasn't selling a brand or anything. I was
Yeah.
literally just, I mean, I could have, but I didn't want to. I was like, look, dude, just take care of my existing clients because I don't have capacity to do it. And so the media buyers who were acquiring those contracts, I was like, I just want my clients to be taken care of. I don't even really give a shit about like how much money I make from it. And that's partially burnout and partially just me being a dumb who doesn't care that much about money.
Gotcha. Okay. So then you said that that was when you did end up taking a little bit of a break, right? So there's a break
Yeah.
there, and then
Mm-hmm.
you ended up in the VP of marketing role.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So I just realized the time. I have like six more questions I want to ask you, but I think we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because
Whatever you want, man.
I was trying to just go through the journey of your story.
Yeah.
We got as far as we got. Maybe that means we do another one day. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Whatever you want.
I will ask you. I have the one big question I ask everyone who's on my show.
Mm-hmm.
It's so let me lay the groundwork here. Okay. So most people have heard of the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule basically says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. And what most people don't know is that actually comes from something known as the Pareto distribution, which is a curve similar to a bell curve, but differently shaped. And the Pareto distribution actually tells us how anything that we can loosely define as creative spreads over large sample sizes. And that means it's not just an 80-20, but there's actually a curve and it's infinitely fractional on itself. So if I do 80% of my results come from 20% of my efforts, I can actually say 80% of those results come from 20% of those efforts, which gives us like a 64-4 rule. And then if we go one more iteration, what we get is 51.2% of our results come from less than 1% of our efforts. So half of all of the positive results we want come from 1% of our efforts, or roughly speaking, about one task or one mindset or one thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so my question for you to end the show is, what is that one thing in your life, Ben?
Interesting. This answer would have been different like 5 years ago. I think right now my answer would probably be to not take things personally. I know that's an insane, like, kind of woo-woo thing. That would have been my answer right away, and then it would have been an answer, and now it is again. Is to not take things personally. I think it's easy when you're starting a business, or a side hustle, as a lot of, I know, your listeners are
Mm-hmm.
doing or attempting to do, right? Is somebody tells you no, and man, does it fuck with your head? Like, it just, you're like, wow, they saw through me, right? They know I'm full of shit and that my product isn't good and that I'm not worth the money that I just asked them for. And I think one of the things that's been like very helpful for me is just not taking anything personally, whether it's clients who, or potential clients, or team members who are unhappy, or the way people view you, especially in the internet. Like, it's really hard with people who are trying to make money online stuff, who are doing a lot of like living on social. It'll really bum you out. right? It'll really bum you out, at least for me. So for me, I found the most helpful thing to like not take things personally, but also just, you know, take personal responsibility for everything that's happening, right? And maybe that's two answers and I'm cheating, but like everything that's good that's happening, if I want credit for it, I got to take credit for all the shitty things that happen, right? So if an employee cursed out a client of mine, that's still my fault, right? Because I either took on a client who shouldn't be there, or I didn't properly train the employee, or I hired a shitty employee. So like just taking that personal responsibility and not taking things personally. Like if a client's mad at you or something, I know that happens a lot in the marketing agency world and stuff. You know, you get frustrated clients. What Listen to them. What did you do wrong? Find out how to get better. I know, separate your ego. Don't think, oh, they just don't know how to sell, or they don't understand how much work this was, or they don't get like, sure, that might all be true, but like just listen and kind of try to see it from their point of view. That's been really helpful for me, and it helps me remove the emotion from my decision making, which can be detrimental, right? Because you wake up on the wrong side of the biz on the bed, you don't want to totally disrupt your business, which I unfortunately have done when I wasn't trying to not take things personally and run things based on data and numbers. Again, you're a math teacher. I don't need to tell you this, but it's much more helpful for my life, and I found it can be helpful for others to just try to not take it personally, the praise and the insults, but also take responsibility for things and try not to take yourself too seriously. Like it's not that big a deal, guys and gals and anybody else. Like it's not a big deal. Like just I get it. I get that it's scary and it's a bummer when like people are harsh to you and when you're trying and you almost feels like everybody's pointing and laughing at you. And you're like, see, they were right about what I think of myself, which isn't great. Right. But be easy on yourself. Give yourself a break and realize it's not that big a deal. Like if you zoom out enough, not a big deal. And you're a wonderful, beautiful person, regardless of what you do. You don't have to do anything to validate your existence.
Awesome. So AJ, if anyone listening to this wants to follow you, connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. LinkedIn is probably where we're most active. Just AJ Rivera. I should be the first one that pops up if you search AJ Rivera.
I'll link it in
It's
the description too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then our website, you can go to ajrivera.com. I don't update it that often, but you can hang out there. You can go to my Facebook. I don't man that either, but I will get the messages if you want to hang out.
I've learned that that's true, by the way, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've learned that that's true. AJ responds to the messages, but AJ's not the one who sees them first.
I I am not the one who sees them first. No,
Yeah.
it goes through like two other people before I before I get to it because it'll bum me out, man. I can't be on social too much. I had to delete all the apps. I can't do it.
It's fair. Know thyself, right?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for donating your time to us, being on the show. I know I had a blast. This should be valuable to people listening. And to everybody who is listening, I'll be back in your boats again next week. Love you guys. God bless.